Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. 2 days until a massive United Auto Workers strike. GM, Ford, Stellantis, 150,000 workers, and the corporate media is in a tizzy trying to paint the United Auto Workers, President Shawn Fain, as greedy and not caring about these just victimized companies who just want to compete. The latest example, disgraceful example, was on CNBC this morning. Notice it seems that the CNBC anchors were a lot more empathetic to these billion-dollar profiteering companies than the struggling proletariat, i.e. the workers. Let's start. Make sure you're sitting down.
Shawn, Joe has a question. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Shawn, we've seen, the big three over the years. There's been good times and bad times. Sometimes the bad times get really bad. And I know that every worker at the big three wants a strong and vibrant domestic auto industry. I assume that's what you want. So, I mean, I understand it's a good soundbite about CEOs and, we want the same type of increases. But if you just put them side by side on what we're talking about. And on the one hand, you're talking about, call it tens of millions of dollars. That's fine. I understand that. But to give everyone a 40%, all the hourly workers a 40% or 36% increase, you're talking about, logarithmically more money that the car companies would have to spend. And that's going to come right out of wherever they get their money. They're right now trying to manage an EV transition, which isn't really going that well, emission standards by 2030 that are going to be very difficult to meet, and really tough competition. So it just, if you want the patient to survive and be very healthy, it might not be possible if you were to get the same pay increases that these nasty CEOs got. It just doesn't make economic sense, Shawn.
Oh my God, call a code raid, get the nurses for these struggling patients who are on the verge of death. If you need a reminder on these sick patients at GM, Ford, and Stellantis, here is your reminder of the struggling masses. General Motors CEO Mary Barra, $26 million pay last year. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares, $24.8 million. Ford CEO Jim Farley, $21 million. Ford profit last year, $24 billion, 9% increase from the year before. GM profit last year, $21 billion, 17% increase from 2021. Stellantis, $18 billion last year, 26% increase in profit. But, they gotta be able to compete, Shawn. Your greedy communist demands are going to hurt the chances. They might have to get one less yacht per CEO. It is unbelievable. And that is why we need you to help fund us to be on the ground to cover this strike. We plan on being on the ground, me being on the ground in Detroit and elsewhere on the front lines of the picket lines, to give the workers the microphone rather than allowing CNBC, CNN, and the rest of the corporate ghouls to spin this about as the workers are hurting the economy and the workers have unreasonable demands. Please sign up today as a Status Coup member. Help us fund, if necessary, weeks of on-the-ground coverage of this massive strike on the front lines. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Let's listen to how Shawn Fain responds about these, terminally sick billionaire CEOs.
So, well, maybe not to you. Labor equates to
just normal
5%. Math. Well, no, it's not. Normal math tells you that labor equates to 5 to 8% of the cost of the vehicle. These companies could double wages and not raise prices and still make billions in profits. This goes back to the post-war boom back in the 1940s, 1945. Inflation rose 45% at that time. Even the government back then was saying that companies back then could raise prices 50%, raise wages 50%, and still not have to raise prices. It's a choice the companies make. These companies raised prices 30% in the last 4 years. CEO pay went up 40%. Worker pay went up 6%. They're making billions in profits off the backs of the work of the members, and our members deserve better than that.
But Shawn, while you know, Elon Musk at this point is actually trying to cut costs, he's already got a huge competitive advantage at Tesla in terms of making the EVs, and you know what the sales of the big three EVs are right now. So we're just talking about relative, you know, whether you're going to be able to compete on a relative basis with a lean and mean Tesla when you're asking for a 40% increase in wages. It just doesn't.
But, you know, Shawn, Elon Musk, when he's not, you know, retweeting Nazis and white supremacists on X, he is pushing this race to the bottom. He is paying his workers shit at Tesla. He is union busting at Tesla. He is exploiting his workers while raking in hundreds of millions of dollars of government subsidies. Self-made man. So how is GM, Stellantis, and Ford going to compete with that when you are asking, not really, let's be clear, he's not really asking for 40% increases because they already gave back since the 2008 financial crash, at least 7 to 10% in wages. The workers gave that back to the companies to save them. So they're first asking, bring us back to where we were 10 years ago, and then asking for a merit and inflation-based raise. Ugh, the vile corporate sympathy on CNBC. And, oh, we have to worry about the companies. And, you know, we cannot risk these CEOs and shareholders having to, you know, maybe buy 1 or 2 less Maseratis this year. Maybe 1 or 2 less yachts. Maybe the country club, only 1 rather than 3. It is reprehensible what these corporate journalists, which they are not, get away with. These are literally public relations professionals masquerading as journalists. It's disgusting. Let's continue.
Yeah, competition is code word for race to the bottom. And I'm not concerned about Elon Musk building more rocket ships so he can fly into outer space and stuff. Our concern is working class people need their share of economic justice in this world. And, you know, people want to talk about class warfare and say this is class warfare. Class warfare has been going on in this country for the last 40 years. And the billionaire class has been walking away with everything while the working class has been scraping to get by paycheck to paycheck. And it's time that changes. The EV transition, billions, hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars are helping fund this transition. And labor cannot be left behind. Workers deserve their share of equity in this economy.
Shawn, just looking at the numbers, you mentioned that labor makes up 5 to 8% of the cost of a car. If you increase labor by 40%, then your costs go up to 7 to 11.2% of the cost of the car. Just moving on a bigger portion of some of those things. The other issue you're dealing with is you're asking for a shorter work week. I understand your argument that the CEOs are making much more money and that's not fair that the rest of you aren't. Would you be satisfied if they gave back some of those raises and then say, therefore, we would take a smaller pay increase?
Shawn, if you're asking for 40% increases, then the percentage that labor costs might go from 7% to 11%. Oh, my. 11%. They would still rake in billions of dollars in profits. They would still be able to invest in electrical vehicles, which, by the way, the government has been giving them free money and subsidies to do so. Money that they don't need to invest in electrical vehicles. But this corporate ghoul is honestly asking, well, you know, you might be making them go up from 7% to 11%. How will they feed their children? And then, well, would you ask for less if the CEOs took less? Do these people not understand that these workers are breaking their back and often having to work another job while breaking their back at the auto job? These workers are having to make difficult choices between groceries and other necessities for their families. I don't think they know or care.
Not at all, because that's just a shell game. I mean, our workers, let me explain this, I guess, to be as clear as I can about this. Our wages have went backwards since 2007, 16 years ago. When a worker hired in and was promoted to full-time, they are $10 an hour behind in today's wages in 2023, when you hire in and get promoted to full-time, you are making $10 an hour less than you were making in 2007. It's unacceptable. Inflation hasn't slowed down. Price of everything's went up astronomically since 2007. Our purchasing power has been severely weakened. And so not at all. And that's really not what this is all about. I mean, at the end of the day, they could, I'll go back to this, they could double our wages, not raise the price of vehicles, and still make billions in profits.
Shawn, it's Phil again. Barclays put out a note yesterday saying you are less likely to strike Ford, that it may be further along in the negotiations, probably has the weakest of the big three balance sheets that are out there, and because they employ the most UAW members, you are less likely to strike them. And then last night, Jim Farley, when they unveiled the new F-150, said, look, there's a limit. We will make offers, but there's a limit to how far we can go. Is it accurate to say that Ford is least likely to be struck by the UAW?
As it stands right now, all three are most likely to be struck unless we get a deal by September 14th at midnight. There is no lead company. All three are expected to deliver for their workers, and if they don't, there will be action. So there isn't a lead company. As we've said from the outset, we expect all three to have an agreement, and we'll see where that ends.
Ford has the weakest on the balance sheet. So will you not go after them, Mr. UAW? Yeah, just the weakest on the balance sheet. They only made, $24 billion in profit last year. I mean, it's obscene. This is the perfect symbolism of the grand bank robbery that has gone on over the last 40 years. That is your money. The blue line being stolen from the bank by the CNBC anchor ghouls and the very corporate villains that they represent all day long on CNBC and other networks. And the auto workers are on the bottom with the rest of us. And they want to talk about, well, they have to stay competitive, Shawn, and electric vehicles. This is why I've been saying this whole time, this is about a lot more than just the auto industry. This is about the class war that the proletariat have been losing for the last 40 years. And that is why I think it's so important, this newfound militancy that Shawn Fain has been executing very well for weeks now. And by the way, they're not going to get 46% wage increases, but if you shoot for the stars, you will get more. And I believe that this strike will go longer because, yes, the wages are important, but I think the key demand that the UAW is going to insist on and fight for is the end to the two-tier system that sees workers that have less tenure but doing the same exact job as senior workers making far, far less. This is not just at the auto industry. This is at many manual labor industries, this two-tier system. I very, very much expect there to be a strike unless something radical changes in the next 48 hours. As a reminder, please sign up today if you can to help fund me on the ground, on the front lines of the picket lines covering a strike.